It's Monday night, and at Green Oaks Gaming, that means it is time for The Journey, a big look at where our adventures will take us. I'm Joe, and today we're going to be talking on our continued conversation about prepping up our gaming environment, the places, the people, the cultures, all the minutiae of detail that we can as we prepare for a new campaign. So if you are joining us live tonight, make sure you drop a comment in the chat so I can make sure I give you a good shout out. If you're going to watch this on VOD, make sure to check out our schedule for when we have our live shows. And of course, if you catch this on YouTube after the fact, make sure to leave a comment and give us a follow and a thumbs up to help us grow. Just helps us decide where to best put our content so that we can reach and hopefully inspire and help a lot of people with RPG specific items. So in our last show last week, we talked a lot about the religious aspect of this game. And just as a point of recap, I suppose, would probably be good if you're just joining us or the show. So I am preparing a new campaign that is going to start characters at level 10. And this is a follow-up piece to a campaign that I've run a couple of times that generally brings people up to level 10. So it's designed to start characters out at level 10 and run them to 15-ish. 15 is the goal, but as I'm putting things together and diving into it a little bit deeper in the prep work, I'm thinking that maybe we can go up to 16 and maybe even 17. We'll see how it goes. But the whole premise of this was I want it to be a follow-up of a campaign that I have run a few times, but specifically based on this campaign. So not just a different adventure, but parts and pieces of the last campaign should impact and drive the narrative storyline of this story. So with the campaign that I have run, and one of my current groups is near the end of, the campaign itself is called The Last Light, and it is designed to allow the characters to go on one of three paths of adventure. So the first path is taking on undead and ultimately facing a lich. And the second path is taking on demons and ultimately confronting a quasi-devil. And the third path is taking on beasts and ultimately taking on a Draco-lich. So still kind of the same elements of all three, but depending on what the characters kind of get drawn towards, what they would enjoy the most, what they kind of go after, kind of determines the path and the villains that they'll face in the story. But ultimately, all three paths are connected by one thread. And so putting this story together, it was that one thread of, all three of these elements are going to really have one outcome. It's just three different branches. But who is pulling the thread? Who wove the thread? Why is that thread laid down? And ultimately, where would that lead in a new chapter of the story? One of the things that I find that I hate is when you have stories that build on them, right? Sequels or prequels or anything like that, but are lazy in the execution and the way they're adapted in. Kind of like, I forget where I've read it or heard it, but someone was saying that they were watching a show. Actually, it was in Misery, the Stephen King novel of Misery, and Annie was telling the story how she watched the car with her heroes drive over the edge and explode in a flame. And when Annie went back to see what happened next, the person that was driving the car jumped out at the last minute and you just didn't see it. And she thought that was extremely lazy, and she did not want the writer to be lazy like that in telling the next chapter of the story. And I'm kind of the same way. I don't like laziness, so I want things to be connected if at all possible. So for me, I came up with a good thread. Ultimately, all of those aspects, the goal is for the party to be successful and stop the evil from spreading. Whichever one of the three, there are other parties who are working on the other two. That way they don't have to try to get all three. It's not overwhelming, and the characters can focus on what's most interesting to them. So with that being said, I started to think about who would be pulling those threads. Why would it be, what would bring it up into the next tier of play where it's not detrimental to the, the region and the kingdom, but to the world as a whole. As a whole, what's going to impact the world based on the story, or those three threads of the same story. So I came up with an idea that there is, because my world has a lot of history to it, I have a wealth of opportunity to pull from. There is a god of death who, one could say a devil, or a god of death that lost their power, dethroned, overthrown, destroyed, defeated, and now has been kind of opened. The door is open for them to make a comeback in a small way. They're not, as powerful as they were, but what a great character who wants to regain their former glory by putting down these threads and starting to weave all this stuff in there. And so that's the direction I took. New lands that I have not touched in a long time, so I'm having to re-explore since I last used this area, what's happened, and how is this primary villain in this next tier, ultimately what was their goal? Ultimately to get back the power that they had. How would they do it? So they have a couple of followers. We'll get into those as we do a little bit more regionality. But with this whole aspect of some new challenges that are going to threaten the world, the players can choose to use their current characters or to bring in new characters. So I want to open it up so that if there's any type of change, we have a couple of seats that are changing over. It's not required, I should say, for everybody to play the same character. So it gives them some autonomy if they want to change it up. Also, this is a good campaign, so the characters will have to be starting out good aligned. So we've got a couple of characters who are more neutral and evil, and they will most likely have some bigger challenges moving into a very good focused campaign. Because as we get into these higher levels, items like manipulation, pride and downfall, dangers of ignorance, those types of things are going to have bigger impacts to the story, to the character stories. And so, with that being said, the first kind of draw in that everybody's going to get, which we've covered in previous videos, is going to be a monarchy has had a sudden death, and now the estranged niece and nephew are being considered as the next rulers, but there is some shadiness, some type of shadiness that has gone on previously, and so the powers that be in this land are bringing in adventurers to get to the bottom of it. What's going on? Is it going to affect this Is there anything to worry about? Take care of this quietly, because it's affecting the military. So you can see on the big map here on the screen, this is just an old map of the location from when I was in quite a while ago. But this is the Citadel that the previous group of adventurers built. And this was kind of their home base. So there was a start point of it, just a very simple moat and bailey, and then they built around it. And so this is the Citadel. This is a 3-story building that I have got to come up with what has occurred in the last bit, or with what's occurred in the last bit. How is this now relevant, and what is the aspect that the adventurers are going to game or come into in the adventure? So I know on the outer curtain wall, there are going to be bodies that are hung up and strung up of military soldiers that the players are going to come across. They're going to be undead. But ultimately, they're really not going to be any threat because they are strung up. They're just out there to dry, kind of. We'll just leave it at that. But when they come into the area, I have to start thinking about their adventuring day. So ultimately, for this adventuring day, we should take 2 days for this milestone, basically. To get enough experience to level up from 10th to 11th, we should have 2 adventuring days. And generally speaking, with a, if you subscribe to the 5-room dungeon, which I love, a 5-room dungeon does not quite, or you can be more challenged to do an adventuring day if you're following the 5-room dungeon concept. So I really want to go through and think about what, as I'm working on this area, what do I get to keep and maintain as far as what the players have planned. Now you can see there are no traps, there are no secret doors, nothing like that. Because they were extremely powerful, they did not need to worry about anything like that. They subjugated a lot of people to maintain rock fields outside, so siege weapons couldn't get up to the wall. Some of that is still going to be there, so it's a pretty defensible area. The biggest thing is now this has been taken over by the military and supported by the nobility, with the thought of maintaining control and making sure that outside forces don't come in and subjugate the people again. So military kind of complex that we have to think about, a fortified citadel, a fortified keep, if you will, with a curtain wall that the adventurers are set to go and explore. Now, because it's 3 levels, I'll actually say it's 4. It's 3 above ground, and then it does have an area below with a cistern and crypts and a little bit of storage area. But that's going to be their first adventure, is going through and exploring this area. To populate it, we're going to be using mummies primarily as the villains. So I've already gone through and listed out for the adventuring day 1, as they explore this area, what will it take for them to have enough encounters to make that adventuring day worthwhile, challenging, balanced. Now what I run into is, once they get that information, how do we keep them spurring and moving on? Remember, this is a military base. We've already started laying the groundwork that the people who are hiring the adventurers, who are looking for the adventurers, are not interested in having them stay and you know, overstay their welcome, you could say. So they are just about get in, get the job done, get out kind of deal. And so I'm wanting to make this less appealing for the characters to want to set up shop. So to do that, I'm going to do 3 different aspects. I'm going to redo my map first off, and I'm going to change it out a little bit. I'm going to put like statues here in the audience chamber, and these statues are actually going to be broken and just beat up. I mean, just absolutely beat up. So we'll have, I had 6 party members, so I don't know exactly how I'm going to do them, but I'm going to have 6 what look like statues, but they're going to be roughly chipped down to just pillars more than anything. And if people take a look at it and see, they'll be able to see that this is extremely rough stonework. A couple of them are cracked because of the age, but this is definitely has been revamped from its previous glory days. I want to make this as uninviting as possible. I want to have the the age show, even though it's got these big, huge, massive, thick outer walls. I want to show that over the 2 ages, the walls are cracked and starting to unsettle. I want to have lots of noise going through for settling beams and almost like creaking and splintering sound of some of the beams. I want this to seem like a place that, well, the military has been using it because of its location, but it's in poor repair. It's going to take a lot of work. And because they're not getting massive amounts of loot and treasure, hopefully I'm keeping things balanced enough to where they're not able to just buy a new keep and put it there. Hopefully it keeps them moving forward and not wanting to set up a permanent base here, which is funky because I'm very much for player characters getting a base of operations. So if I'm not going to be using this as their base of operations because I want the story to progress and move forward and I don't want to get them entrenched, and the continent is so big they've got a lot of ground to cover, what can I do for their base of operations? So this has been something that I've been struggling with as I've been working on the story. Now I know there is a monastery that is close to this location that I thought about bringing them to. However, I'm wanting to avoid that too because there are a couple of climactic points that I want to use with that monastery aspect. So I want to avoid bringing them there. So ultimately, what does that mean for a base of operations? Remember, we've got 5 levels at the minimum that we want to go through, and we want to have a place where they can feel secure, where they can put their armor off and have a council around the table and talk and plan and strategize and figure things out. So what's a good base of operations in this far distant land that is not welcoming to strangers and outsiders, that is very mistrusting of them, but gives the players the peace of mind to know that if they are in their base of operations, they're relatively safe. So that's a struggle that I've been going on and off with. And again, I don't want to use this Citadel as that base of operation. After this location, so in the final climactic battle here, they should be able to suss out some clues to be able to drive them to a different location, which will be the second adventure. Hopefully, if things go according to plan, of course, your best laid plans. But between those times, what's a place where adventurers are going to feel secure? They're going to not need to feel like they have to rush, right? I want them to have some type of sense of home base. So I've been struggling a lot with it, and I came up with an idea of, because this area was built on an ancient volcano that blew and had this massive impact. We know water travel is pretty important right around there, but primarily everybody sticks to the interior of this continent. Current campaign, the characters have a kind of destroyed and abandoned cloud giant palace that they are working on restoring, and that is their base of operations. I, for a moment, considered having a similar setup here, but again, I don't want to give them too much space. I don't want to make them untouchable, and I want to keep it as, boy, as horrible as this is going to sound, as grounded as possible. So my thought was, with one of their NPCs being able to cast and utilize a space that they can enter and exit regularly for long rests is going to help them. The biggest challenge I have there is that is an NPC who is controlling that aspect of the piece and not the players themselves. So I have not yet finalized that aspect of it. So you can see, even with all of the prep work that I've done and put into this, there are still aspects that I'm still feeling out and trying to suss out and decide what can I do to have the elements that I want, game elements that'll keep balance and allow for good storytelling to progress and drive forward, and still have those challenges. But ultimately, is it something that they can find? As I was going through my list of what they should have for magic items, kind of looking through at what they'll have, I thought, do I give them a scroll with a good spell, something like Leomund's tiny hut, and have repeated scrolls of it? I'm not quite feeling it. So aspect wise, while I love having the Citadel, I want to make sure that they're not utilizing it beyond just an adventure point for this element of the story. Now, while we're looking at the Citadel, we've covered a lot of ground on what the military looks like, what they feel like, and how they enact. So some of the things that we want to really drive home, if we turn to our notes and look at the military, we know that their tabards show the Royal Griffin crest. They're wearing gloves. They primarily wear tunics and vests with epaulets denoting the rank and hierarchy. Functional pants, functional boots. They've got that skull cap with the kind of dangler thing. It almost makes me start thinking of a toque, like a French toque. I am going to call them the deacons, who are going to be each deaconary is going to have an overseer, and when the talons of the griffin are brought in and asked to explore this military citadel, what are the things that they're going to come across? So we know the primary villain that they're going to come across is going to be mummies. I've already kind of blurted it a little bit. But what kind of decorations can we do? We want to make sure that we call out and hearken that old with things like the statues that are now broken, and it's like they're erasing the history, right? But we need to start looking at the area as well. What are some of the things that are important? We know that there is going to be a big wealth of things like fruits and berries, coffees. There is going to be some things like goat and sheep meats that are going to be salted and cured. Um, we know that the local wood is salt wood, but that's a little bit further here. So there may be some finery there, maybe that the overseer has, but that's about it. Beyond that, we haven't really gone into a big, huge thing of what aspects we're going to encounter in our citadel. So we did say that we want to have those old elements, broken, cracked, creaking. I want to keep it unsettled and unnerving. And so I'm just writing notes here for this area here. And this is just on the back of the page of the military piece that I was writing down. And I've just called it the Citadel. So in this area here, because it's not huge and massive and everything, I mean, it really is. If you look at, these are 10 feet, or no, I'm sorry, 5 feet. But if you look, I mean, just the antechamber alone is actually pretty massive. 30 feet around. I mean, that's a pretty big sized room. So a lot of space. I mean, the pantry alone, look at how massive that pantry is. Kitchens are huge. I mean, everything about this area is really big. So there's a lot of space to play with. But remember, the military is very traditional. And there are a lot of things that are ceremonial, and trying to think of that, I'm thinking of, what are some things that military could find a lot of value and tradition in. So some of the things I think about is the parade grounds, flags, a lot of ceremony in changing of the flag from a morning flag to a night flag, maybe. That's kind of cool. Here in the States, we have, unless the flag is lit and illuminated, you take it down and you put it up. And so it's only flying when the light is on it, during daytime hours. So maybe there are two flags. Let's do flags for night and day. That could be some indicators as they're approaching. If they're approaching during the day, you could start to unnerve things by saying, having the NPC kind of calling out, why are they flying the nighttime flag during the day? That generally every morning is switched out. So flag ceremony could be a cool thing, an important aspect that we can tie in that something is really amiss because they're not following their traditions. With that being said, then we also have to make sure that we have, an area for the flag ceremony. And then where are they housing the flag when it's off duty, basically? So they're bringing it up and they're putting it in the overseer's chamber. Maybe they're setting it in the on the first floor. We don't have a whole ton, but maybe they're setting it in the audience chamber. Who knows? Those are things we can talk about, though, and decide where it's going to be. Excuse me. I actually like it being folded up, put in one of the salt tree boxes, and brought up to the overseer's room, which will be on the top floor. Now, additionally with that, some of the aspects that I want this adventure to go into, there are three real key pieces. One of them is in the library. There is some information that I want them to find out in the library about the item that has caused this disturbance. So I want to tie in the library There is also an aspect in the crypt that will have some big clues leading them further down should they investigate down there. And then the final one is in the Overseer. So knowing that I want them to get into the Overseer, having the flag part there is a good call out. One more thing for them to kind of, I hate to say put the rails on, but give them idea that they should check out that Overseer's room. So the Overseer will have the flag in there. Excuse me. For the crypts, of course, that is going to be an area where combat will lead them to. Hopefully, combat will lead them to. And then for the library, one of the interesting things about the setup is actually that to get to the crypts, you actually have to go up and into the second floor where the library is at to be able to access the chapel, and from the chapel down into the crypts. So it's actually kind of designed that way to work pretty decent. But how else can I get them interested in, hey, we need to go check out the library as well? That's something here. So with the traditions and the, that historical aspect of military, one thing I want to do is they document everything with the flag change, shipments for the pantry, guests, etc. Very traditional, very log everything, mark everything. Everything is going to be found in the logs, which can be found in the library. So you can have an NPC call out 3 of the aspects here already. The flag is not correct. That flag should be switched out with the other flag, and then they can go in and talk about how the Overseer stores the flag in a place of reverence in their vault or chambers. They can talk about how clues to what is going on should be found in the library, because they are such sticklers for keeping track of everything, noting everything, and all of that good stuff. So a lot of good opportunity for our NPC to start driving home some of those aspects. Now, one of the big things that with this first adventure, we know the hook is going to be when the adventurers are brought into it, but I do want to have a patron not be the ally to take the crew to the Citadel. Now, I do want to have an NPC there, but I don't want it to be the gray monk, the gray monastic person to be the NPC to take them there. So I want to have this be a member of the actual military. So I'm going to write down this. This is going to be a young soldier who's looking for revenge. And rather than looking for revenge, I'm going to put answers, looking for answers. So I know now I have to come up with an NPC, just a kind of a young buck who's been here before, maybe not posted here, but has been here before and can give some insight, give some inspiration, and really kind of help steer the story, just to make sure that, again, I don't like to railroad, but for this campaign to really take off, the characters need to experience these 3 aspects in a big way. So I will have to do a little bit of steering, a little bit of railroading to make sure that they get the opportunity to explore those 3 areas. And then hopefully they pick up the reins and can start seeing some of the breadcrumb trails that are left out in front of them. If they take them or not, that's up to them. I'm not going to dictate that they have to. I'm not going to move things on beyond that point. But the consequences will start occurring if they don't follow up those clues and start taking on those aspects of what the campaign storyline is about and work towards resolving those. Because ultimately that's the goal of this campaign, is the resolution, the character's story on interacting and resolving this world shattering event. Are they going to be successful or not? If they are, that's going to be great. Then it will have an additional chapter of this story to close the bookends on. If they're not successful, then it could lead into, a great aspect of a different campaign that I run, generally 15 to 20, where all of the characters, they start dead. So it could be a great segue into that if the players decide to go that route. And if I feel like playing that campaign, it is a little more challenging of a campaign, but it is very interesting because all of the player characters at level 15 start dead. So if they are not successful, then it's a great segue into that. Ooh, that was a lot that we covered already. I know we've still got some time. Wow, we've only used up half an hour. Get a quick drink. Keep that throat moist. So for aspects, now that we've talked a lot about the Citadel, we're bringing back the aspects of the military, making sure first adventure is going great. The adventuring day, I've already broken it out to see how many I'm sticking with. I think 3 medium, 2 easy, and 1 deadly encounter for the first adventuring day. So I've already got that figured out. I have already assigned out that we are going to be fighting the primary mediums are going to be mummies. I've already got the encounters kind of penciled out. Now I haven't put the stats out on my sheets. I have not gone through and looked at the individual treasures. I have not done any of that. Perhaps let's do a little bit of that here on the channel so you can see my process for it. Let me just juggle my notes a little bit so I can be on my correct information. And I hit the speaker there, sorry, or the mic there. Hope that did not ring too loud. All right. So for this adventure, I'm going to pull up my monster manual and I'm going to open my Dungeon Master's Guide. And I'm going to use both aspects because for the encounters themselves, I know I've already, like I said, penciled in the aspects that I need. And for this one here, we're going to the mummies. And my mummies I'm flavoring a little bit differently. But they are not super powerful. So as we're going through, what are they going to be carrying on them for treasure, because since the crown is not paying, we have to start thinking about the treasure and rewards. So there are a couple of things. Is there going to be a hoard at this location? Is there going to be individual treasure? So because this is a military outpost, I'm going to say there is not going to be a hoard. Everything is going to be broken down into individual treasure. So in my monster manual, I can go to the individual treasure tables, and I can quickly decide or roll or see what, based on the creature rating, what each of those creatures is going to be carrying on them. And it should be minimal, right? Because it's a military base, because this is not a very wealthy country, because we're not playing a super high, wealth and overly rich state, I think the individual treasures are going to be key. Now, some of the things we need to think about is, like in the barracks, are there going to be foot lockers that soldiers have in there, that the soldiers are the ones strung up on the wall? So those are all things we can decide and talk about at some point as we're going through and building out. But overall, I like to think of the kind of overarching piece being more individualized here, because I think it goes back into that traditional piece. If the soldiers do have anything on them, it's going to be very minimal. It's going to be on them on the wall, just because they're very traditional. They're used to keeping everything close, so that if outsiders come, they're not able to be subjugated and get things taken away. So on my sheets here with my mummies, I am just going to go through and I'm going to decide that I'm going to just level things out with gold pieces. Because we're going to be at level 10, it's not as challenging to the players when you give them copper and silver. By this point, they're pretty used to gold. So I'm just going to keep everything with kind of the average of 10 gold pieces for my mummies. Now these mummies here, I am going to alter a little bit, because I've got two factions of mummies that are being produced in this campaign. These mummies are all brought about from two different aspects, kind of dried out, and so think of salt, sand, and wind, I guess, is the best way. So not, I guess you could say kind of Egyptian process, but also there are a lot of cultures that regularly maintain a person's body after they pass and let it just dry out in the wind, in the heat. And as long as they're maintaining and doing this process, you can actually get that mummified form. So also salt, I mean, just absolutely dehydrating everything out, getting all the juices out, super important. So those are the types of mummies that are going to be encountered in this location. That's all story driven. When they get down into the crypts, some of the investigation should lead them to the next, or one of the next opportunities for them to explore and adventure in really where these mummies came from, what kind of dropped here in this location. So the mummies themselves are going to have on average 10 gold pieces apiece. Now I do have a mummy lord. Now that mummy lord is going to be my little bit of a different. So still individual treasure. I'm not going to do a hoard. And here's where it gets interesting. With this treasure, how much is the mummy going to have, and how much is actually going to be found in the overseer's area? Because remember, this is their military base. That overseer, challenge rating wise, is going to be very similar to my mummy lord. So I can actually take what's here and kind of divide it out. What makes sense to be on my mummy and what makes sense to be found as loot in the Overseer's Vault through decorative, aspects of their chambers. This is someone who is kind of the commander of the base and should have a little more perks and have a little more wealth rather than just the soldiers. And then do I want to use things like in the pantry having the rations, things like that? Because of the point we're starting with 10th level, I don't feel that's as important. So I'm going to stick with the individuals again. And if the players ask for more details, if they want to loot the pantry and everything, I'm going to take note of it and I'm going to come up with some things. I'm going to keep it kind of meager, but it's also going to kind of inform me the direction they're wanting to go. Remember, they're supposed to be here to help. They should be here to help. So for our higher level, our higher CR, also sticking with gold, man, this is kind of tough. I mean, we're averaging about 700 gold. I'm going to say the mummy, I'm going to give 150 in appointment. And then the rest of that, which is going to be 550, is going to be in the Overseer's apartments and throughout the Citadel. So I already know there are going to be some cool things that are going to be decorative, military focused, with like instead of a ceremonial sword, I mean, it's still going to be a ceremonial weapon, but something that is going to be super identifiable as that military. But then also, I do want to have some magic items because of where they're going to land with a tier when they get to this level. At the end of the level, basically, I want them to gain a couple of items. And so that will be like an armor of gleaming, I think, is a cool item that would be in this Overseer's appointments. I would say possibly this potion of hill giant strength. So I'm just going off a list by both rarity as well as minor and major. And ammo +2, 2 ammo +2. So something they can find in the armory. Again, just some things that we can populate in and out. Pop these notes in here in my notebook. And just like that, my first location is really starting to come to life. I've got a good idea of how I'm going to be describing it, some of the key features and aspects that I want to really focus on driving home, that this is a secure but old, ratty, worn down place that's got bad history. There are some bits of loot here and there, but it's pretty mundane and stripped down. The biggest thing is there is an aspect of evil that has fallen on this place and is making a big impact. And with that being said, oh, sorry, James, I did not see your message pop up, but thank you. The biggest aspect that I want my players to take away from this first adventure is all about discovery. Discovery is, in my opinion, the most important thing we can do for our player characters to start them out in a campaign. There should be challenges, there should be some type of obstacle for them to overcome, but ultimately they should, at this point in the game when we're just launching a new campaign, it should all be about discovery. It should be about putting breadcrumbs out in front of them and starting to peel back the curtains a little bit. And then when they start throwing those curtains open and doing the aha kind of things, it should be exciting, it should be rewarding, but they should only see the path. They should not see the end, because you want to have those twists and turns in the road. With this here, it's enough that I'm able to give them good solid details and really make sure that they can kind of feel and imagine and picture the game world, the location, the people that they're interacting on behalf of and with and for, but also really start to set the stakes for this game. When they get to the end, I want them to kind of say, I remember at the very beginning in the Citadel, this was something that was there and we didn't pay it any mind, or maybe we did and it helped us get to this location and this point in this time. But ultimately, with this aspect for this first adventure, I've got enough to drive the narrative, make sure that I am keeping them on pace and on track, giving them challenge, giving them ample reward based on those challenges, and setting up for the next aspect. So the final part is, as I move into that Mummy Lord's 150 gold piece treasure, some of that is going to be in decorative jewelry on the Mummy Lord, right? Some of that is actually going to be in the sarcophagus. And that's super important because that sarcophagus is going to be disguised a little bit. Remember, I said there are 3 areas that are important. The overseer is going to have some notes on what they have found based on this sarcophagus. The library is going to have some notes on who delivered the sarcophagus and when, as well as all the basically like shipping documents. And then the sarcophagus itself is going to have some disguised panels on it that hopefully the players at this point are intrigued enough that they'll want to investigate. And that should open the curtains a little bit more with more breadcrumb roots that they can say, wow, this is bigger than what we thought. This is kind of game changing and we need to act. So let's go tell our benefactors, but maybe they decide not to. Maybe they decide, let's just go act. And they'll have 3 different options in which they can act. 3 paths will be laid in front of them, depending on which aspect they take. All of them are going to converge. All of them are going to converge at the end. But it's the road that's going to intrigue the characters via the players that will explore in this adventure. And that's why this setup piece here is so important. Once we go through, the rest of the bones we'll be able to flesh out a little bit more and add some more ribs to it so that as we're gaming, the players can help flesh out the story of their actions and reactions to the overall story backbone that we've laid out, put in front of them, and really let the players and their characters tell the story that we're going to unfold. So it seemed like a lot of big work at the beginning. I know we've hardly touched any of the set dressing on the Citadel. Maybe we'll do another week of that where we'll actually work on the map. And because this is a super old map, and I would love to have it upgraded and work on that, as well as some of the aspects that I want to build into the descriptor. We will show you how I lay things out prior to running the game, filling out my monster sheets, making sure that I denote the treasures that we're going to give, and put a little bit of spin on what those mummies are like. I think that's what we'll focus on. Let's dive into the adventure itself, building the adventure, and I'll show you what my process looks like in the next video. Of course, if you're not able to catch us live, and James, thank you, I do understand that it's hard for you to catch it live. Definitely why me putting it on VOD is so important, so that you can check it out later or even go to our YouTube. But maybe we'll use this as an experiment to drive our Wednesday show. So Wednesday we build a character that is based off of a miniature. I'm going to check and see. I believe I may have a mummy, and we'll use that to build out either our mummy lord. Unless I'm not able to find it, then we'll just do something different. But if I have a mummy character, a mummy miniature, we'll use that to build a mummy lord monster and go over kind of the details of this villain. That will be the first nemesis of our upcoming party. So we're getting close to the end now. I do thank you if you're able to catch us live. James, thank you. I understand being across the pond is challenging with the time variances and everything. But of course, everybody who gets an opportunity to share in the gaming community, I definitely appreciate your support and hope to hear back from you with things that you'd like to see us cover, any type of topics that you want to hit on the channel. Let us know. If there are products you want us to review, we do reviews on Friday. And of course, if you're into miniature painting and everything, Saturdays I'm always in the studio, as well as through the week, just I don't always broadcast it. But thank you for joining us here, if not here, on our YouTube, on our Facebook, on our other socials. Thank you for sharing in the community that I love and helping us find ways to grow, share information, share knowledge, share experience, share wants and needs, and ultimately turn this hobby from just an aspect of escapism into a community building event that everybody can benefit from. So until the next broadcast, have a fantastic night, and until next time, remember to keep answering the question, where will your adventures take you? Good night.